Hi, everyone. I'm Alex York, and I'm here with Kass and Mike Lazerow, entrepreneurs, investors, and now authors of your new book. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
I'm so excited to talk about all you guys have built in your careers, but I first want to know you guys are a couple living and working in New York media. What is a day in your life like?
Day in our life, let's see. It's a little bit easier now that we have 3 grown kids. I will tell you that. It was a really hectic schedule when we were doing like the big heavy lifting with companies. But I think it's get up, let the dogs out or walk the dogs. And I think we both work out and then we start work. And we probably do a little bit of work before, we're actually doing it. And it's work all day, make dinner, hang out with the kids or whoever's home. And then grind.
Yep, that seems to be the case with so many founders I talk to. It's like really an all-day thing.
Yeah.
Like you said, starting work even before you
Yes.
have it on your calendar to
Exactly.
start. You guys started your career, your joint career with Golf.com, went on to build Buddy Media, sold that company. What inspired you guys to get into entrepreneurship in the first place?
You want to start?
Yeah, so I went to Northwestern journalism, and what inspired me was the internet. Even at the time, we're talking about 1994, the internet was not going to be a great thing for journalism, potentially, but a great thing for the world. I also wasn't great at journalism, so I started a news service at Northwestern University called University Wire, which became Student Advantage. We ended up taking the company public and then riding the dot-com crash into the ground. So I learned in April 2000 what it's like to lose a lot of money on paper. And at the same time, Kass had moved to Chicago where I was living. We met at a wedding and she came up with the idea for golf.com. So as I was transitioning, she had an unfair competitive advantage to hire me, which she did. So maybe you talk about golf.com.
Sure. I first say that I think for me, starting companies was a way for me to build like great cultures and great teams. I've always loved being in a team atmosphere. I actually ended up playing like 2 very lonely sports. I was a golfer and tennis player in college, but those teams that we built around it in college sports was just so great. So I took all that with me, and I think that's why I actually launched being an entrepreneur. And for golf.com, it was about, allowing recreational golfers to track their game online. And it was the height of the internet, craze in 1999. And it was just incredible. And we jumped and we did it.
And it came from a personal frustration in your own golf
yes.
experiences, correct? Can you tell us that story a little bit?
I can. So, for all those, avid golfers out there, you're probably a public course golfer because you can't afford, like we couldn't, to join a country club. And back then, and you'll never believe this to all the people out there were these boxes where you had to input your scores one by one. And those only existed at a public course or your private course. But you have to go back to the same public course to enter your score, which didn't make any sense because as a recreational golfer, we play everywhere. So I was frustrated by that. I was also frustrated by the fact that I was tracking all my stats and I was competing against my brother and my father. And every time I would send the spreadsheet back and forth to my family, I felt like I was in last position on everything, and I'm pretty sure my brother was cheating. And so I was frustrated one day and asked Mike, there's got to be a way that we can just lock this up. Can we lock up Excel? I mean, remember, this is way back in 97. And he, a huge light bulb went off, and he said, wait a second, what if we create this content for golfers and then syndicate it to everyone? So that was the birth of golf.com.
You guys both started in these media industries at a time, like you said, when the .com era was really just starting, had not really taken off yet, and also had not changed so much of what we know today. What about that moment in the internet ecosystem allowed you guys to start building these companies? How has that then changed over the last 20 years? What have you noticed?
So our whole career has been about trends. And what we find is trends are your friends until they're not. So trends, if you can get ahead of the right trends, it almost doesn't matter what you do. So the internet, as we all know, turned out to be a big thing. A lot of positive, a lot of negative. It's a dangerous place, that internet. But it's here, right? It's trillions of dollars of commerce. It's information. It's everything. It's how we connect. And now mobile phones, all that doesn't happen without the internet. At the same time, we basically were looking at how do we kind of create our own niche for that. And then we did it at golf.com. I think the next trend was social media. So if you think back to 2006, 2007, the beginning of some of these social network sites, those hit me equally as hard. As a guy, I didn't like calling friends, right, talking on the phone, but keeping up with pictures and swiping and the streams seemed like a very important thing for the world. Now, it was a different time. Facebook hadn't ruined democracy and some mental health and had the issues that fast forward it's had. However, it was a really powerful force. And we said, how do we get involved? And so if you're an entrepreneur, find a big pile of money or at least a stream of money, put a bucket in front of it. And that's where you want to start your business. And that company we built for 5 years got to 50 million of annual recurring revenue, sold it for close to $1 billion to Salesforce. And we've continued to invest, continued to start businesses around trends.
And that's Buddy Media that you're talking
Yes.
about
Buddy
there.
Media.
In building that startup, you said there that you tried to notice trends as you were building these different companies. For entrepreneurs today, so much is changing so fast. AI is coming into play. So many other trends are happening and they're moving on really quickly. What is your advice for young founders today in terms of finding the trends that are worth investing in and not just something that is going to be so fleeting?
So we've never seen a big business being built in a tiny market. So when I talk about trends, it's basically like, where's money flowing? Now, it doesn't have to be a new trend. So I look at a lot of businesses that we're involved with. We bought a healthcare staffing firm, a lot of cash flow businesses going from an older generation to a younger generation. That's a trend, right? Of kind of the boomers retiring, moving on, not having someone to give their business to, so being able to buy those businesses. But trends is basically just how money flows. And you clearly don't want to pick a trend that is fleeting. That's going to be here for a minute. And I do think that in this world of instant gratification, when kind of soon isn't soon enough, you got to be careful. And so focus on like, where are the big piles of money and where do you want to attack?
And I think with AI, we look at it as right now really impacting productivity, right? So, obviously there's going to be some incredible companies that come out of this that are going to change things. Like, we're really excited about healthcare and how AI will impact that. But we look at it like Mike decided, okay, in our staffing company, instead of hiring BDRs, let's use AI to help that. And we're seeing some like massive trends with companies who can do things like that. So that's pretty much what we would say.
Yeah, I love that. In terms of the social media space, it's one of the industries that is booming right now.
Right.
You guys started this company, like I said before, it was really, taking off. What are some of the biggest differences, especially in terms of social media marketing or getting other companies, not even necessarily social media companies, but healthcare companies or, consumer product companies out there through social media? How have you noticed social media impacting how companies are able to grow today?
Well, back when we started it, it was like Facebook. Facebook in May 24, 2007, they opened up their platform to allow other developers to build on top of it. And then, as Mike said, like everyone was flooding to Facebook, right, at the time. And obviously then Instagram and what was, Twitter and all those things. And so when you have that, we were building on top. So we were building apps. That was like the first vision. We were building apps on it. Then we were doing custom things for clients. And it quickly changed to consumers, meaning the people on Facebook, really sitting there and big Fortune 500 brands wanting to reach them with messages. So the idea and concept of marketing hasn't really changed that much. It's about how you use it. And I think today, social media is even harder because there's so many voices out there. I think it requires a lot. We're doing it ourselves. It's very uncomfortable right now. We started from 0 followers last July, and we're up to close to 20,000. And it's about doing the same thing. It's saying the messages that mean something, that make your audience feel something, and doing it consistently. And I think that's just what marketing is.
And every company has to be a content company.
Exactly.
And every company has to bring value. If you don't bring value, you're dead because it's just too hard to break through. You're not going to be able to win on these social nets, whether it's TikTok or Facebook or Instagram or YouTube, without bringing value. And that's what Forbes does, right? What are the Forbes lists? What is this quality content that people trust? That's value. If you're a healthcare company, how can you bring similar value to an audience? And it's possible, but it's harder for a lot of those companies.
When you guys were first starting out building your businesses, golf.com and Buddy, what was that value that you were bringing? And how did you realize that it was a value that was worth investing in, that was really going to be able to grow? How did it go from this idea that you had into really these companies that you were building?
Well, I'll talk a little bit about golf.com. I was just obsessed with golf. I mean, that's how we started dating, right? We were playing golf all the time. Those were our dates.
She's a great golfer, beautiful swing. I'm like, who is this hobby who knows how to play golf and is good at business? Like, what?
But like for me, I just knew that with golfers back then with high disposable income, and like remember that again, this was like 1998 and 1999. Everybody was getting on the internet, and this was the boom, right? You had like e-toys being sold, going public for what, like billions?
Yeah, it's like 30 billion.
It's like 30 billion. It was ridiculous. So we knew we wanted to, again, Mike's idea of trends, right? We knew we wanted to get there, and we thought golf, something we know, right? And it was a big enough market. Looking back now, I don't think it was the right market, and we just jumped. Mm-hmm. So you talk about Buddy Media.
I mean, Buddy Media, the most interesting part about Buddy Media is for the first time, you had these global platforms, right? So just take Facebook, which started, when we started, less than 100 million, when we left over 1 billion, right? So all of a sudden, if you're Unilever, it's not just local marketing. It's not just advertising in the New York Times or Forbes. You have one platform that reaches humanity, which means every country, every language in which kind of it's legal, right? There's countries that they're not operating in. And so you had to detect if someone was coming in from Venezuela speaking English versus the US speaking Spanish, right? And you could tailor content, micro-target content. So our software was the first one to let you, with one presence, think about like Dove for Unilever. If someone came in from Miami speaking Spanish, they could get a whole different experience than someone coming in from New York City speaking English or speaking Spanish, right?
And it provided the security control. So when you are a Unilever and you have tens of thousands of employees, right, and you have, let's just say, 150 of them on one account, you've got to be able to give permissions in a very, very specific way and approvals. And that's what our platform did. It was really comprehensive.
It turned any company into a global media company. Where you didn't have to print or broadcast. You could just put out content on these social graphs.
Content creation, yeah.
And the whole idea is that birds of a feather flock together. Everything that we helped invent was then weaponized, through Cambridge Analytica and some other stuff of how they use data to kind of micro-target to not only change ideas, but change behaviors, which is why it was so dangerous. And fast forward, that's only accelerated.
Yeah, I want to talk about that globalization aspect and the responsibility that founders do or do not have today, especially on a place like social media or digital media in general, where there's a lot of conflicting ideas, misinformation, like you said, damaging democracy in a lot of ways. What have you guys noticed in terms of how founders should or should not weigh in on that, or the responsibility that they have as these things are changing and the globalization is continuing?
Well, the most important part is like, what is your business doing to contribute? So we believe in doing good as we do well. And this is something why we're so attracted to Mark Benioff and the 1-1-1 model and integrated philanthropy. The idea that your stakeholders are not just your shareholders, but also your community, your employees, your customers, and kind of the world, right, in general. And so we just took a different approach. And if a founder optimizes for the wrong metric, so engagement being the number one for both, I think, X and Facebook, you get what you get today because negativity is much more engaging. Right. If I call you a name on social, you're going to come over the top. The algorithm doesn't know. It's just these two people seem to have a relationship, right? And so these platforms never changed engagement as their number one metric because engagement equals dollars, right? Because it's retention.
Yeah, it's retention.
And they would have had to kind of take a different approach, which I think why Reddit has played out differently. We just were with Steve Huffman, the CEO, on Sunday in LA. And from the beginning with their karma scores and taking a more kind of personal approach of like...
And human approach.
It's not performative like social. Like social is very performative. It's who we want to be. It's
and
what
narcissistic.
We want to show. Whereas Reddit, we're like, our like kid is getting in trouble at school. Who can help like with strategies, right? It's community.
Right.
and it's not that performative. And Reddit has its own issues. I'm not saying that it's without like moderation and different kind of groups, attacking it. But, how you as an entrepreneur approach your business in terms of the impact you want is really important. And some of the best companies are using social good as a marketing feature, whether it's Warby Parker or
Todd's. I mean, remember when we made like our number one bonding event, and I always thought it would be the kickball game or like the scavenger hunt we did. It was always Cycle for Survival. And we were the first corporate team for them. And I'm telling you, like, there was a sea of about 150 Buddy Media employees just cycling for, to fight rare cancer, like to beat it. And there's nothing better as a glue for a company than social good. Mm-hmm. So we highly recommend it.
How has community engagement changed over the time that you guys have been building these companies? Like, you're saying here, like some of that in-person interaction is
hard
coming back now a little bit, especially after COVID. But how has that changed in your perspective?
From what I've seen, I think, and might be controversial, but I think founders over the last, I'm going to say 5 to 6 years have been more on the lazy side. So they've enjoyed the perks of working remote and felt like, well, culture is what it is, and this is all I can do. So we'll do like happy hours, I guess, over Zoom, and we'll play those little games over Zoom. And our approach is we like to manage people in person. We like teams. We like all hanging out. We think you thrive better. You understand the nuances of things when they change, and it's really important to have transparency. Communication over Zoom, even though it's fantastic, it doesn't always work. And we tell all of our portfolio companies, you should have a budget. If you have people all around the country or the world, you should be traveling to those hubs 4 times a year as the leadership team.
How has Gen Z played into this? Because as a Gen Z member myself, and like I said, covering the 30 under 30 list, these are the conversations that I think a lot of young founders are grappling with right now. Like, do we bring people back? Do we change culture, like revert to those sorts of things? Do we keep innovating? How is that generation?
Well, so we're in a hybrid world. Mm-hmm. Like, there's no going back, especially in like if you're employing young people who value freedom in many ways over money and options.
Yeah.
The question isn't whether we should go back in person. It's how do we want to create bonds that scale? How do we – and we know that if you have a friend at the company, you're 50% more likely to stay at that company, right? So it's good for the company. And we've just never seen culture being built virtually, just like we've never seen a romance being built virtually. It's like we've never – you can't build a best friend relationship just by saying hi on the phone every now and then. And so, yes, use the technologies to get the day-to-day work done when you're not together, but you got to be getting together quarterly. And if not, the founders need to travel.
Go on the road. They need to be that road show is going to be essential.
And give some love.
Exactly.
Like we could give love every day by talking, recognizing how are your kids,
And I would say, like, I can't tell you how many founders are upset when Mike and I say this. It's just totally out of their vision to take time away and actually travel, not do what they're doing on a daily basis, whether that's sales or product or whatever, and waste time, I'm putting quotes up here, waste time actually like developing those relationships. But what they don't realize is if they don't have that glue with everybody, and let's say the economy changes and they have to pivot their model, everyone's just going to jump ship because there's nothing to keep them back.
Yeah. And in terms of these like relationships that you're talking about, founders building, the relationships you guys have built, your forward, your blurbs in here are written by some like really prominent people in business, in culture today. How have you guys gone about building your own relationships and network? What has that looked like from your perspective?
Our whole life has been giving. And we've always shown up by saying, how can we help? It's a very selfish thing because we know the more we give, the more we get, right? So we're not, we're not the best people in the world, but we know that like if we could help someone, that's going to forever like change the relationship. We've gotten very lucky on the people we helped. There was one day where a 34-year-old who was working in his dad's wine store showed up to our office at Buddy Media and said, I've been working since I was 18. I've never made more than $100,000. I have no money for an office. Can I use your conference room?
Only conference room.
Your only conference room as an office. And we saw Gary Vaynerchuk build his whole empire with thousands of employees and $500 million of revenue and all this stuff from that little conference room, focusing on like customers for VaynerMedia and hiring until he had so many people in there, the fire department shut him down.
Literally.
We couldn't tell Gary to leave because no one tells Gary to do anything. But the fire department came in and said, this is a hazard. He had like 30 people, triple decker, like in one conference room. And that's happened again and again. Scott Galloway, we built our businesses together. He's on the back of the book, right?
Right.
He had L2 and he wanted to help his customers. So these were members, marketers, primarily luxury marketers, figure out Facebook. We weren't paid, but we would show up and deliver content and speak and try to educate, hoping that we would get some as customers.
And it's about really being generous with understanding that like we're all in this together. And I think that's the really cool part about entrepreneurs is that we have this camaraderie of suffering, right? We all suffer, right? And what we love, what we do. Even though we're suffering every day, we love it. And there's nothing that we would rather do.
Because it's where the purpose is. Like you talk to an entrepreneur, they're like, yeah, I'm miserable and there's nothing I'd rather do.
Right.
Well, why is that? Because I feel like I get up, I'm fired up.
You know what you're doing, you have purpose, you have passion behind it, and it really helps you to thrive.
In the book, too, you guys talk about your previous experiences, your experiences growing up from, unconventional families to living with, family members who are entrepreneurs and how that, inspired you guys and kind of led to where you are today. I want to ask you, Mike, like you guys are talking about here, this struggle that so many entrepreneurs have to go through. Growing up with so many entrepreneurs around you, did that not like turn you off of starting your own things one day?
It's a really good question because I write about, some of the mental health issues that my dad had, which were caused directly by his business. He was a real estate developer, ran into some issues. And I saw how hard my mom worked, who worked with my grandfather and doing property management. And she was a public interest lobbyist running her own organization, and my stepfather, who was a small money manager. And so I saw how hard they worked, but they had a level of freedom, which I appreciated. I wasn't a great athlete, but
can you
probably
tell them
see.
what freedom means? Because I think it's
that's what I was saying. Like, so I'm not a great athlete, but I played on some teams. They never missed a game, right? Because they didn't have a job where they were chained to a desk. And when I started the first company, and then when we started like Golf.com, where I joined, and then Buddy Media, it wasn't to make money. It was just to be free, like not to have to work at a desk job. And I think every entrepreneur is like motivated differently. But a lot of them that we talk to are motivated by freedom, fear of failure. They have something to show the world. When you start a company, you're basically announcing it to the world and giving people a front row seat to your failure. So, which is like, I remember thinking of Buddy Media, even right before we sold, we're like, oh, if we fail after raising $100 million, we're like the worst people ever. Because you really are stressed about like, man, we're all set up to win. It's up to us. What if we don't? What if we screw up?
And then from your perspective, Kass, coming from, a very, as you say in the book, like being very competitive growing up and finding these, outlets for yourself. Is that what you think got you here today, or what characteristics?
Definitely. I mean, at 38, after having our first son, I found out I was dyslexic, which really was a big aha moment for me, because I think back in high school and college, especially college, I was an athlete. I played 2 sports in Dartmouth, and I was struggling, like really struggling, like C's, D's, like nobody helping. There was no like accommodation center or anything like that. And I think what got me through it was my competitive nature and the fact that I just understood what suffering is. When you are an athlete growing up, and I'm talking like high competitive sports, you are suffering all the time. That's what you do. There's not a lot of downtime. There's not a lot of like, hey, let's go out. It was like train in the morning, do your academics, go home and train again, then go back and play something, and go to sleep by a certain amount of time. So that definitely helped me. And I think what motivated me to be an entrepreneur is the idea of building teams that like being together and like doing the work more than they don't. I could never guarantee that you loved work every day, but I absolutely knew I could have people together who liked each other and could laugh every day.
And in terms of this fear of failure or, building to avoid that in a lot of ways, selling a company is for many founders what that success metric looks like. For both of your companies, and with Buddy Media having sold for $750 million, was selling always the goal? Did you go into these startups wanting to sell, or what was that mindset like?
I think not. I mean, and I will say that we were just at an event where a bunch of founders who had just sold were like, they would trade all the money in the world to go back. I think for us, we actually enjoyed the process of being with all these incredibly smart people that were way smarter than us. Like, they were around us and we just enjoyed learning every day. Obviously we had fiduciary obligations and our investors definitely wanted a return. But that definitely wasn't what motivated me.
Yeah, we love creating, and we love creating culture, creating businesses, creating business models. We invented some new business models.
Creating, little nest eggs for everybody.
Yeah.
That was a big motivator for me.
What's cool is, like, when you sell one of these businesses and employees who have stock get life-changing money, so people like Abby Lauterbach, who started really young right out of NYU right here, and now doing incredibly well at LinkedIn, but she made a decent nest egg when we sold, right? So that's awesome. But at the end of the day, I don't think we talked about exit once at Buddy Media, other than we thought we were going public. So we'd hired a management team that was public company ready. We were the fastest software company at the time, I think, in history to get to 50 million in sales. A lot of companies, took us 3 years from the time we launched the product to get into 50 million and crossing that number. And so we assumed that, we're going to double the next year. And, we had bankers lined up and we're planning to go public. We then got a call from Mark Benioff and Google and Yahoo and some others saying, we're interested in getting in your space. And we did a series of meetings, got 2 offers. And then I was like, we're definitely selling because the numbers just got let's be honest, Salesforce overpaid for what we were. But Mark wanted to get into this space with the leader, with a team that he could scale with. And some of our leaders are still not only at Salesforce, but leading Salesforce, which is really cool.
You tell the story in the book, too, of with Golf.com, kind of a crisis happening when you were kind of approaching these conversations and then coming out of the second time around with Buddy Media. Can you tell that story a little bit? And what did you learn from the first experience that showed you what to do maybe differently the second time around?
I think we learned everything.
Yeah.
I think it was the most impactful thing that's ever happened to me in my career. Would you agree, Mike?
100%.
So basically within about a year and a half, we had started Golf.com and we were asked to be, basically acquired by ChipShot.com, which was a Silicon Valley-backed, Sequoia-backed company that made custom knockoff golf clubs. They wanted to be bigger. Our content fit them. It was great. It was like a perfect merger. Our board said, great. They wanted to do all stock. They were ready to go public in April of 2000. I remember us going, okay, let's do this. And, I'm thinking, wow, we've done it. In less than a year and a half, this is going to be, we're going to be massively, successful. All of our employees are going to have, this incredible life. It was amazing. And then we get the phone call late March that the president at the time, Brian Straub, called up and just said, hey, listen, Sequoia pulled out and we have no more money. We will not be able to pay our payroll. We're done. And I said, I have no idea what you're talking about. And they said, we are done. We are going bankrupt. If we don't get money in the door within 5 days, we are bankrupt. We're shut down. And then he goes, but you could buy it back. And I think at that moment is when my competitiveness really kicked in. I hate losing. And I felt like I hate it more than even winning. And I just turned to Mike after that and just said, we're going to figure this out and we're going to start it again.
For founders today who are building up their companies with this in mind, these sales in mind, these big numbers in mind, these big finances in mind, what is your advice in terms of how to make sure that they are working with the right people, finding the right selling opportunities, and not maybe acting too fast for something like that to maybe happen, but to really just wait to find the right thing?
You can't sell a company for $1 billion any given day. You can get to work and you can do what you can do to grow the business. So the only thing you need to focus on is, what do you want to be and what are the top 3 or 4 things that you need to do to be that? So if you want to be number 1 CRM, which is what Salesforce did, or the number 1 vibe coding platform like Lovable or Cursor that's raising at a $9 billion valuation that's just announced, then you just have to show up and get customers, right? And that's all that we did. All we did was like, here's the software that we built. Who's going to license it? And we lined up 9 out of the top 10 global marketers. We sold because we'd executed a business plan and gotten big, fast, hundreds of employees, 8 offices around the world. But that doesn't happen at once. It's winning every day. And then if you win every day, you win every week. Then if you win every week, you win every month and every quarter, year, and decade. Things take a while. It didn't at Buddy Media because we were building on the back of this like rocket ship, Facebook, and then Twitter, if you remember, 07, 08.
Instagram.
And Instagram eventually came in when Kevin sold in 2011. I think that was 2011 or 12. And all you can do is like only do so much in any given day. Is it the right stuff? And we're very paranoid about doing the right things. And we outline in the book something that we use, which is we borrowed from Mark Benioff, the V2 mom, to get hyper-focused. There are 3 reasons companies fail. The founders start fighting, they're not focused on the right thing, or they run out of money. Like those are maybe 90% of the failures we've seen are tied to those 3. So pick your co-founder very carefully. I can't say I was careful, but let's just say I get the better part of that deal. And then what are you focused on? Like, and is it the right thing? Even if you do what you say you're going to do, does it get you where you want to go? And then do you have enough money to get there? Because strong companies with no money in the bank can't pay employees, can't do anything.
And what Mike's trying to get at is if you do the right things every single day, then the offers come, right? You've created something that people can't look away from. They're like, holy, amazing. Like we kept doing things that were so extraordinary that even Mark Benioff was like, okay, like what's
One
going
thing
on?
I would add is there is something you can do, which is get to know your buyers.
Yeah.
So don't show up saying, you know, buy me, buy me, buy me, right? They'll be like, whoa, like take it easy. But it's a relationship. So say, hey, here's who I am. Here's what we're doing. I'd love to keep you posted. If you're raising money, maybe there's a strategic investor who invests, who then buys. But by the time we got those offers, I had pretty deep relationships with those companies. They knew who I was. They knew how we marketed. They knew how we thought.
And you did what I think every founder should. Number one, understand your success metrics, right? So obviously every day, every week, every year, you're going to have those goals. But to investors, their success metric is either going public or being acquired. And so you better know who those potential targets were. And it wasn't like Mike just showed up one day and said, hey, do you want to buy me? No, he kept them in the loop. He wrote these epic board letters that everybody on our board got. Then he would pare down all the confidential information, and then he'd send it out to all of these potential investors and acquirers.
And the bad information. I was very transparent with our board.
It was very transparent.
And employees, but
Yeah.
you know, to the external market, it's kind of marketing, right?
Right,
You got to get rid of all the warts.
But those relationships weren't made just overnight that somebody decided in April that they wanted to give us a term sheet in May. It was, 5 years in the making of relationships that said, like, here's what we've done. Oh, here we've pivoted. Here are our latest, wins. Here's the latest logos that we have on the board.
As investors now, how do you identify the startups that are doing all these things right and are a good investment from you guys?
There are only
giving
6
money?
things. And we've had to get we've done 100 deals. So we've seen so much, and it means we've turned down like 9,000. And it all comes down to what's the product. If you can't explain it in a second, it's like, we're out. Why is it different? It's got to be different, because that's going to be your marketing and kind of how you differentiate from anyone. Yeah. Number 3 is how are you going to get it into someone's hands, right? That's actually number 4. Number 3 is how many customers there are. So like not just the size of the market, but like if you're selling this for $1,000, how many customers? That is your real market. How do you sell it and sell it in market? How do people find out about it? How are you going to distribute it? We learned that through our investment in Liquid Death, really understanding how the water is going to get in the can, get to wholesalers, distributors. And 6 is, as a journalism major, I never took finance, but I want to know on the back of an envelope, does the business model make sense?
Like the unit economics.
If it costs like $100 to make, but you're selling it for $50, like that ain't a business, right? So just really think through, like, is this, even if I do what I want to do, is this a business? Can we make money in a way that supports the vision that we have.
And that'll help you like green light the idea. And then the next part for me, and where I really get under the hood, is have you picked the right co-founders? Do you know what you don't know? There's so many founders out there that love to be the one that knows the answer to everything. And those, I mean, we will not invest in those companies. I want to see the person that says, this is my expertise. I've hired so-and-so, or I am going to hire so-and-so around me to fill in the gaps.
And with all this advice, that's at least partly the reason that you guys wrote this book, to tell your story, to, you know, get these bits of information out there to people who are building today. What is one thing that you hope everyone who reads this takes away? Is there one piece of advice or one of your stories that you feel like is really, really critical to helping other people have their own success?
Yeah, so from the highest level, it's that uncertainty is your business partner. You're never going to be in a world of certainty. So how do you make great decisions in this hurricane of uncertainty without letting fear and doubt sabotage you? And we think that by sharing all of our lessons, sharing what we learned the hard way, it's going to prevent a lot of that. And then the most important thing that comes out of the book, I think, is focus. Like how you focus will really determine kind of your outcome. So the order of your priorities will result 100% in kind of how big the outcome is.
For me, I would say if you're starting a company trying to go from 0 to 1, you have to focus on communication. And that has to be 100% transparent. And you have to understand that you are literally trying to create an organization that every time something doesn't work, which to entrepreneurs they love because it just means you're getting closer to what will work, that they're going to stay with you. So communication, building the cult and culture, and making sure that you're you're putting the right people in the right place for scaling.
My last question for you guys. Before we started recording, you mentioned that you feel like you're starting over again. You had never written a book before, and this is a new thing that you're doing. You guys have pivoted so many times, done so many different things in your career. What is next for you guys? What are you excited about in terms of trends that you're watching that are coming down the pipe, or projects that you guys are working on right now?
Well, we had something really cool happen over the weekend, which I almost killed Mike for a year and a half ago. He came home and told me that he had bought the golf franchise of New York for a new high-stakes par 3 tournament, this whole league, and kind of threw it over the fence for me to operate. And crazy enough, the New York Bluebirds just won this biggest tournament that they have this past weekend. So that was really cool. So I do think there's a lot to be said for sports and entertainment. I also think that healthcare is really exciting right now. We love that space. And we also love profitable businesses. We don't have to recreate the wheel at all. We're looking at a bunch of other businesses, and we just think that with our operations and monetization skills, we can really help.
We love pizza.
Oh,
Okay.
Mike has to
So my
say
dream
this.
is to open up 10 pizza places.
I love it.
Here
Who
we
doesn't
go.
like pizza?
New York
right?
is the best place for
And
that.
it's the best.
So.
And they're great businesses. You could open one up for $250,000 that generates $1 to $1.5 million in revenue at 30% margins. Not great during like pandemics, but then you do delivery, whatever. So we love cash flow businesses. And most importantly, we feel like this last 50 years, I'm 51. I know I only look 50.
Wow.
It was all about earning, right? Like earning degrees, earning money, earning respect. And these next 50 years about impact. And so we wanted to kick off the next 50 years with at least here's our lived story and our lived lessons. And then in 50 more years, we'll probably write another one with like what we got wrong and what we've learned since. But it's really impact is driving a lot of what we want to do.
That's awesome. Well, thank you both so much for sitting down with me. I think that this is such a good like embodiment of all these things that we talked about, but with so much more detail even. So I really appreciate you guys sharing this with me, and I can't wait for everyone to read this and learn a little bit from it.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.